So there's that whole concept of the wolves of Yellowstone. Like, I don't know if you've heard the story before, but Yellowstone at one time had the wolves were gone because the people that settled there destroyed them, right? Just like the buffalo were gone, the wolves were gone, right? And what happened was you'd go there and there wasn't trees by the rivers, and the wildlife wasn't in balance, and we didn't know any different, but that's what it was. When we introduced wolves back into Yellowstone, what happened was the wolves started killing more of the coyotes, which started, stalking the other game. And what happened was the deer and those kind of animals had to be sneaky around the river. They couldn't browse on the river so readily. So trees around the river developed. And when trees around the river developed, there were more mammals and birds, arrived, right? Which meant that there was a diversity of plant life, and there was a diversity of animals. And the wolves kind of put things back in balance, so it became this really lush, kind of different environment. And what that did is made the rivers change directions, right? Now this is all, that's not my field, but there's lots of videos you can go find on that, which is really fascinating. And basically, it's kind of an example of how there's a climate, right? The climate exists around, in Yellowstone. It's got weather patterns, and it's got and it also has creatures there that have a nature of what they do. But putting the wolves in changed kind of the behaviors and the norms of that little ecosystem. So you're going to think about, I would just like to think about culture in that way. The culture is the things that you do to your company that have an effect, throughout, right? And so the wolves on the Yellowstone is an example of a system and how a system can be affected. Culture is made up of really three kind of things. So norms and behaviors are what we think of normally, like, how we do work, how do we do things around here? The things we say to each other, the stories we tell. That's kind of what we think of as like the primary. That's the thing we identify, right, as culture. And underlying that culture is motivations and controls. There are things like, what are the motivations for people to actually behave that way, and what are the norms to do that, right? And what we physically see are the symbols. We see the things that are there. So if I can think of a company, Next Step Bionist and Prosthetics, which is a company that I've worked with for a long time, and Greg, these people are really kind of cool and amazing, and if you think about their culture, the motivations and controls are, we want to take care of patients no matter what. We relate to our patients so they understand us. We don't pay commissions to people. People work there because they love the work, and that's like the motivations and the way that kind of works, right? The norms and behaviors are, of course, are going to be affected by those motivations. So the norms are customers come first, clients come first, patients come first, always first, right? We all team together to work on whatever they're going to do, right? We create casual relationships, not casual, but very personal relationships with people. We go above and beyond for stuff. The behaviors and the norms inside is this free communication. It's very, very transformational, right? There's no rank doesn't seem to be a problem. People don't act differently because the boss is in the office or not, right? And the symbols we see, the symbols out of that are, if you walk around, you see pictures of the owner of the company, and they'll have cropped and put some funny picture of him on the wall playing golf, it's like they gave him a bobblehead for Christmas, there's the symbols of these silly little things that come out of that really cool, relaxed culture. Other symbols are, you walk in and there's a whole room for kids, and the whole wall's painted with animals, and it's like this whole, the symbol of, we're really welcoming you here, right? Like it's right there for you to see. You feel it, the energy, as soon as you walk in, as soon as you talk to the person in front of you. So that's kind of what culture is. Now the question is, how do you control it? So is it just, companies should just put a room in their office with painting of animals? Would you think that'll change the culture, right? Well, how about we put a foosball in the break room? Maybe we put a foosball in the break room. Now all of a sudden it would be a cool kind of high-tech company, right? That's not the way it works, right? It's the norms and behaviors based on the motivations and controls that create the symbols. It's not the symbols create these other things. If I can give you another example, a law firm once came to us and said, we want to be like a kind of a Silicon Valley company. We want to be kind of hip and cool. And they didn't say that. They said they wanted to be kind of contemporary and modern and be relevant to a younger generation of people and prospects. And they just wanted to be modern and that. And what they said was, we want to be like we think of like Silicon Valley. That's the way we think of it. Well, Silicon Valley, so you can't just take an old blue shoe, law firm and just transfer the total transformation to be a Silicon Valley company. You can, but it's not what they thought, right? So they went off and toured some Silicon Valley companies and came back and said, they have beer in the kitchen and they have stage in the middle of the office, and there's not walls around the offices anymore, and there's climbing walls on the walls, and there's no, it's very relaxed and it's like very casual and nobody gets dressed up. Well, they went and saw that and said, the thing that's changing their culture is that they have beer and they have a climbing wall. So how do we do that? And I remember thinking, you're not going to change your culture by putting a climbing wall in your office or making these little symbolic changes. It's got to fundamentally come from thinking through several variables about the company. Anyways, they didn't like my advice. I don't know what they did. I don't know if they changed since then. But another example is I had the company that makes the scales on the highways, and I don't know, there's a couple companies that make scales on the highways. So when you pull your truck off to the side of the road and they weigh the trucks, right? Well, this particular company made these scales, and they called me for a consult. They wanted to know, we want to, they went to a workshop and they said, we want to change our culture because we know it's about transformation, and they said all the right stuff, like totally cool, good. Let's think about transformational leadership. Let's talk about how to create that kind of motivation. Let's talk about how to create those kind of norms and behaviors within the company. And when I started out, so I had a consult with them, and I had all the executives in the room, and I said, so tell me about your company. And they said, well, they're skilled craftsmen that have been here for 30 years, most of them. We have some engineers that have, a lot of people have been here a long time, and we want to empower them. I'm like, okay, so. And as I got into this, I realized that it's probably not a right thing to do, because if somebody has been working 30 years in a machine shop, let's say, right, and there's no judgment about this, or this is very common. You take an engineer and you say, hey, engineer, you're now empowered to do whatever you want. You take anybody that's been doing something for a long time and say all of a sudden, and they're doing very particular focused work, right? Like they know their job, they do it well, and now you tell them they're empowered. They don't know how to do that. It's not something that people can all of a sudden shift the behavior. So what happens a lot of time is when people promote engineers to leaders in a company, a lot of times those leaders don't stay because that's not what they want. They never wanted to be a leader. It seems like the next thing to do, but they leave. It's the same thing with, having a bunch of employees that, have been working for a long time, very happily, by the way, doing a great job, and all of a sudden you want to change your culture to be transformational. It's not that easy.